All right, so this is rather exciting. I'm going to talk briefly about definition could vary. I'm going to be talking about my philosophical journey. So I didn't get into philosophy until about 2009 is when I first got into philosophy, and I learned it accidentally. I heard of the term philosophy prior to that, but got into it accidentally online from somebody on an AOL instant messaging app recommending to me, after we had a very small discussion about the military, and I was possibly endeavoring to join the military, and I explained that I had a scar and had issues, with the dermatologist and such, and that I was trying to fight it, and he sent me this video. He's like, "Oh, I recommend." Not a video. He actually sent me a No, he sent me a name of an individual that goes by Stefan Molyneux, and he said might not be remembering it 100% here, but he didn't send me the video. I remember he told me to search for it on YouTube, and I think he sent me Stefan Molyneux's name, which the philosopher's name that goes by Stefan Molyneux, and so that that's not the point of this video. I'm not to talk about Stefan Molyneux, but that's how I got into philosophy. And so I watched the video. I searched for the video. I watched it, and I was like, wow, okay. So it was very impactful, and reasons neither here nor there, but that's how I got into philosophy. To the point where I started searching my own terms and arguing with people, and I was already an argumentative person outside of just my own history, my own past, my own personality type, if you will. And again, neither here nor there, but in short, that I've always been philosophical. I think all children are philosophical naturally, and then they have it beaten out of them, pretty much, through artificial consequentialization. So that is my funny thing. It's my reintroduction to philosophy, which most people don't get reintroduced to philosophy in such a way. And so so that's how I've been listening to Phat since and that was in 2009, and so now we're approaching 2020, so it's going on 10 years. From the date the month that I started. So now, passively listening to philosophy is a lot different than proactively enlisting even just the verbiage in your own life. But passively listening is still, to philosophy, is still, immeasurably better than most other activities in terms of just better in terms of what yardstick. That's a again, the topic for another time perhaps, but I didn't really become philosophical until recently. I'll put it to you that way. Philosophy is a strategy. Philosophy, and I'm not speaking metaphorically or allegorically. I'm speaking literally. Philosophy is a strategy. It's a strategy not for survival. It's a strategy for determining that which is from that which isn't. It's a tool for understanding the world for that which it is, as well as navigating the world in ways that distinguish ourselves, from other primates and animals and such. And so, that is, there are no other beings from what we understand in 2019 that can understand concepts the way humanity does. And so that is, That's that's the facts from what we understand today. Now the problem is that you know well, the problem that I ran into is that I started to see that a lot of influential people were saying a lot of influential things, and that passion was not. I was seeing through rhetoric, and I was starting to understand the difference between empirically, like the difference, um, an example from that which um, can possibly work, and then that which people say, and then that which you know uh, people say that is accurate compared to not so accurate. And so I started to draw more lines of distinction between different forms of language and their use, and how philosophy is being not exploited, but how science is, what we perceive as science is actually usually pretty flawed, in the democratic form of truth seeking, or truth consensus, where it's been flawed in the past, and that you know that is all pretty big stuff. Now, where that came to fruition for me was when I started to look at what people would say about food more closely. And because everyone thinks they're completely, like the talking heads, they all are as completely certain as one another, and they all have quote unquote peer reviewed journals, or just the best show on Netflix or something. And none of this means that you're right. Right. Certainty does not mean that you're right. Right. Like to say 2 + 2 is 5 over and over again emphatically, right? Emphatically, and then have other people applauding and clapping and looking really nice in suits and such. None of that is an argument. None of that is a sound argument. It's not an argument, quite simply. And so that's where philosophy, I just like, whoa, I started to question reality, in terms of what it is that I understood to be true. And I did have a bit of a panic, like an inner panic in me, like, whoa, if I can be lied to about, something like veganism or vegetarianism, or any other kind of diet. I'm not prescribing one diet over the other. I'm just saying that, that it's the diet and it's the best diet, for your body. Um, then, then where else could I have been misled, right? Where else could others before me have decided to, in my youth, allow me to be misconstrue certain things due to their presentation, sort of elusive presentation, or their captivating presentation, or their passionate presentation. And so, the passion is a very, very big and profound. I'm not degrading the passions. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be passionate. You shouldn't try to woo people over to your point of view. I'm just simply saying that that's not, your communication style. The content is in the communication style are two different things, to delineate a crucial point of my message. And and also growing up, I was more of a rhetorician naturally, until I got involved significantly with in a relationship, with a former partner of mine, and she and I are no longer together. And but during that process, I became slowly more dialectic naturally than rhetorical. And but I did not ever assume how deep the rabbit hole philosophy goes in terms of, how there's just like, you can have so many assumptions, accurate, sound, valid, and one of them can be off slightly, and you're just completely in the wrong direction, right? It's like if someone gives you the right directions to get somewhere and then they give you like one wrong turn, I mean, you're not going to be in your direction, right? You're going to be lost. And that one wrong turn can get you, you can fall off a cliff. But at the same time, how philosophy is done today is that if you're a philosopher, then you're more likely to be gerrymandered off a cliff because, everybody else is in fantasy land. And then you have two or three few, trollish punks who want to take over the town or the village or, just, sort of form or whatever. And so they try to find your sort of blind assumptions and work from there and, all that kind of stuff. And so, philosophy is a dying thing because it's not. If you're into philosophy, you're not doing it for money. If you're doing it for money, then you're not going to make it. I'll put it to you that way. Now, do philosophers make money? Sure. Are there philosophers who don't make money? Of course. I mean, it's the same thing with any other sort of profession. I would say, but I mean, why do you do your profession? It's like it's the same thing with the last video I made was about eating. It's like, well, why do you eat? Do you eat to live or do you live to eat? Right. And so it's kind of the same thing with philosophy. It's like, well, do you live to philosophize or do you philosophize to live? Right. It's sort of the same kind of dynamic. And some things are, I didn't choose my eye color, right? And I made prior to past decisions that, led me to this path more rigidly, but for the most part, I didn't choose philosophy as much as philosophy chose me. A few early decisions, if other people allowed me to make certain decisions, even romantically when I was younger, I probably wouldn't be in the path I'm in today, which of course is not my fault. I'm not an authority figure when I'm 10 or 13 or 15 or 16. So at least not over, parental figures and quote unquote caregivers and etc. So that is, so philosophy, my journey of philosophy is simply that I learned that I didn't know much and that what I thought I knew could possibly be wrong, and not possibly, but probably wrong, because none of it was based on, which none of us do, which is search for the truth in and of itself without any sense of confirmation bias. Of course, we all have forms of confirmation bias, and the most you can really do is just accept and admit them. You can't. I don't think you can get rid of confirmation bias. I mean, you can check for confirmation bias, but with your own, you sort of you can check for confirmation bias, but I mean, by being self-aware of your own biases, but I don't think you can get rid of it, right? It's just like how in certain elements of society where sort of lower echelons of society where people organized by race first and foremost, and there's not really much you can do about it. And then, well, I would say that that's something that that's sort of primal based, in that we do naturally. And so now, do I have an affinity to say that? No, that's an uncomfortable truth. And so this is something that people don't like philosophers because they do what other people say that they do that they don't, and so it reveals a sort of humiliating aspect of their own character that they don't want to admit to themselves, right? So if someone says, "Oh, I'm all caring and loving," and then you say something that's completely, profoundly uncomfortable and damaging to your own personal possible career or possible personal, it's just like a risk, like Donald Trump. Like, why did he run for office, right? I mean, the guy's a billionaire, right? He could have gone anywhere and done anything. And so, and high IQ to make that kind of money, right? And so that's So it's a kind of humiliating in that sense, right? Compared to, politicians who dedicate their life to quote unquote the community, and then they end up being more parasitical than anything else. Um, and so that is humiliating to politicians when you have a non-politician beating you. And in the same way, when you have a philosopher who claims, to have just humility, right? Like, oh, I just a lot of stuff that I don't know, right? A lot of stuff that I don't know. I've been studying philosophy. Even if you define it as passively, even though I've been proactively passively studying philosophy, um, for I mean, if you compare it to someone who goes to college or something, I mean, yeah, I wasn't turning in assignments, but I was reading books and completing sentences and debating and completing my own, doing my own work individually and bringing philosophy to my personal relationships was actually a lot more than what the average college person does, which is basically just get drunk, right? And at least that's sort of the sort of a typical. Um, I'm talking the 50 to 75K a year sort of college person. I'm talking those kind of people, and so that's so I mean it's not passive then, right? Because then you would have to define them as being passive students, which nobody does. So I've been studying philosophy for almost 10 years now. So that's yeah, I mean it's yeah, so it's humiliating, right? So this is why philosophy is like like Plato's allegory of the cave is so popular because people want to associate philosophers with hiding all the time, and and the thing is that it's not that philosophers are hiding, it's that uh, philosophy is a it's work output, it's energy expenditure, and sure, it's a team effort. I mean, it helps, right, to have a team effort. You can only we're born with two eyes and one brain, and so it would make sense logically, just like to some people, the Earth would seem logically to be flat, but it's actually more distinctive to you'll be a better philosopher if you pursue philosophy individually compared to collectively because you're not circumventing prior prejudices, right? Because as soon as you admit a prior prejudice or any sort of confirmation bias, everybody's heartbeat goes up and they say, "Oh, well, no, I'm not going to do this. Instead, I'm just going to bury you under the mud," right? And so they use this, right? They use this to exploit you, to rationalize, their own positions. And so, of course, the science says is that, when you contradict someone, they double down, right? They dig their heels. They don't say, "Oh, I was wrong," show me where, etc. They just double down. They actually get more defensive. And so you're better off not, for the most part, debating people. You're better off not debating people. And so, I mean, that's the truth. Those are the facts. And so, and then of course, what people will do when your philosopher is that they'll question your sources, they'll ask you about your sources, but the thing is, again, is what you're skeptical of is a personal decision, right? And that's not philosophy. A personal decision is not necessarily a philosophy. I mean, it's your philosophy of life, but it's not philosophy like metaphysics or epistemology or like a technical discipline of philosophy, the technical discipline branch of philosophy. It's a it's just like your personal decision to be skeptical in that fashion. I mean, because you can instead turn to your parents and say, why am I so skeptical of philosophy, right? Or you could turn to your quote unquote peer group and say, why are you guys so skeptical of this philosopher or that philosopher or why aren't you more skeptical with this authority figure or that authority figure? And so what people question or what people challenge, there's so many assumptions there that could be taken to task that philosophy can end up being nothing more than a you know never ending game of with the public, and in particular if you're not discriminatory in terms of who you engage philosophically with, of no, you question this first, no, you question that first. Of course nobody actually does this, right? Nobody actually does this because People aren't even that patient to even do that. So that is, again, I hate to sound like I have contempt, but I mean, yeah, I do. I have contempt for, non the abhorrence that is taken root towards philosophy. And my favorite philosopher, living philosopher, is just I've seen him attacked so many times that I'm just he's done nothing but positive work. I mean, nothing but positive work. So it just shows you that it's a digital timeline of what previously to technology we were not allowed to even fathom, never mind talk about or expose. And so, the dissidents of the past who were hung or just, thrown about in a ditch and not fed, etc., their footprint lasts forever online, right? You can't permanently really remove anything online, and your effects are profound. It's a ripple effect, right? So I'm making this video, and people are going to be wondering, what I'm doing, why I'm not contacting them, and the people can hear me making the video as I'm making the video. I mean, this is profound ripple effect. You don't know who you're going to reach. I mean, right? I mean, the way I was reached. I mean, it only took one person. It only took one person to send that one message, and I became a philosopher basically. If it wasn't for that person, I don't know. Would my life have gone to hell? I mean, probably. To be completely honest, the direction I was headed, probably. So it's philosophy. I mean, I'm not saying philosophy is heaven. I'm just saying philosophy is my kind of heaven, and a hell is to not know the difference between truth and falsehood. To me, that is hell, and philosophy distinguishes the difference. And so that is my journey of philosophy. I mean, quite simply, try to keep these under 30 minutes. I mean, originally it's under 5 minutes. Then it's so. So I mean, I guess that's a good place to end it. I mean, for everyone, it's different. I mean, with philosophy, it's different for everyone because everyone has their own reasons for wanting to know stuff and wanting to be. I think every philosopher wants to be right. I mean, I think that's the case. I mean, nobody wants to be wrong, but when you think that you're right and you want to believe that you're right and you purposely avoid information that contradicts what you believe, then you're worse than wrong. Right. I mean, that's bigotry, right? And so, I mean, to be a bigot, I mean, no, thank you. I mean, bigotry is so normative and so everywhere. I mean, it's like somebody's saying, "Do you want to be, do you want to have ears?" It's like everyone has ears. Why? Like, why? It's like, do you want to be a bigot? It's like, I'd rather be a philosopher. And so, so it's just, you know, I think philosophy will be revived. But I mean, that's I guess not for this video. Yeah. So I mean, it's different for everybody. It's a personal decision to be involved in philosophy. It actively takes work. I mean, this is like Nathaniel Branden 101 stuff. You actively have to engage your prefrontal cortex to be philosophical, right? You're comparing new information with old information, discarding obsolete information. It's almost like the way someone would program a sort of laptop or something. Someone programs it really quickly. Excuse me, programs the computer really quickly, and then the software really quickly, and then they skipped over a bunch of stuff, and so then someone else has to review it and modify the code. And so philosophy, I mean, it's sort of like an open source code where things are constantly being updated. And so, so I mean, it's 2 + 2 4 all the time. I mean, sure, yeah. Right now, can you think of like a hypothetical exception situation in terms of like getting into like really, really, really esoteric forms of, uh, you know, I guess some kind of form of astrophysics or some kind of just very PhD type of, astronomy, then sure, I'm sure you can find some kind of possible um, place to inject doubt or some kind of form of doubt into the certainty of 2 plus 2 equaling 4. Now, but you can do that with anything. You can do that with anything. And so just as you can pretend that there's no such thing as absolute truth, right? The thing is though is that your assumptions, when someone does that, right, they're automatically your life. And so, so for me, it was a course correction. Originally, it very much appealed to me. Philosophy very much appealed to me, and the individual, that I aforementioned was the one who delivered philosophy to me through the screen, right? Not to me personally, but and so that process of and having the interaction, we've gone back and forth. We had emails and Skypes and um, uh, conversation telephonically, and just it's not just watching a video on YouTube, and then I've read material and just gone back and forth and called into a show and such, and so it's it's a process of it's a process of negotiating reality, right? Like your comprehension of reality has to be like you have to continue to update your comprehension of reality, or you're like you're not going to live, right? You just I mean this is like the whole point of like weather, right? And weather is constantly changing, and so I mean if you just want to believe it's sunny all the time, then I mean you're not going to be prepared for a tornado or a hurricane or something else. And so that I mean the point of philosophy is just I think it's to evolve, right? Philosophers constantly invented and elevated society, um, even when it meant the end of their life, the end of their, the end of their. I mean, obviously that would imply their career as well. Just it even just like just philosophy above all else. So that is that's something that nobody wants to talk about. And so philosophy is it's not it's not something for 10-year-olds, I would say, but at the same time, I mean, the curriculum could easily you could easily be taught philosophy in elementary school. I mean, um, it's just actually, I think no, it is for the kid. It is philosophy is for children. Philosophy is for kids, definitely. But I'm thinking practically. I'm not thinking philosophically here. I'm thinking. I mean, theoretically, of course, but practically in today's society, the way that it would be implemented is not a. That's something where you know it's not a books and films and um, people being retrained and incentives needing to be the main thing would be incentives. Incentives right now are just way off. So, yeah, that's my personal. I mean, into philosophy. People say, well, it's like there's nothing like what's good about philosophy, right? It's just like you're understanding reality. But I mean, what about Jaeger bombs, man, or something else? I just it's like look at it like how a lot of people like how a lot of people that again I'm speaking empirically, um look at church, which is just somewhere to go on Sunday or something to do a couple days a week, or maybe I'll look at a verse or quote a verse or something. But philosophy is life, and it's not a metaphor. That's literal. Like you can't escape philosophy. Like if you're a philosopher, you don't want to escape philosophy. You want to thrive in philosophy, and it's not to say not to have fun, but philosophy is the only chance that I think that we have as a society to promote non-dysgenics, non-de-evolutionary procedures. If philosophy is promoted, then philosophy is proselytized, then philosophy is then. I mean, we have a whoa. I mean, everything that the Jack Fresco talks about in the Venus Project could be could at least to some things could happen. It could come to fruition. Or what I forget the name of the Asian physicist who talks about how we're type 1 civilization, type 0 civilization, all that kind of stuff. None of that's possible until philosophy is respected, admired, and taken precedence over ideology, for example, and soapboxing and all this other kind of stuff, like this kind of you have to have the right piece of paper in order to do this or to do that. That's not philosophy. I mean, is 2 + 2 = 4? Yes or no? I mean, if it doesn't, why? If it does, why? And how did you come to that determination? I mean, that's philosophy. I mean, yeah, it's boring, it's lame, right? But you don't understand philosophy if you think it's boring and lame. I'll tell you that much. But I mean, that in and of itself, until philosophy is boring and lame, we won't get to the next stage of society. Philosophy should be boring and lame, right? Like, race and IQ should not be so controversial. And if it is controversial, it should be debated. And if it is debated, it should be debated in a rational way with people who debate, not people who just write memeing and stuff. So, I mean, sure. I mean, that's how culture, promulgates or continues, whatever. That's how a lot of people became alive, right? Just this kind of rash abruptness and such. I mean, and this is indicative of the sort of more of what goes on in South, places like South America than North America. But I mean, just that kind. I mean, of course, it's an evolutionary strategy, but I mean, evolutionary strategy is not is competing with other evolutionary strategies. So I mean, that's something to keep in mind. And so, philosophy is not. It's philosophy is definitely a high IQ sport. At the very least, it's a high IQ sport. And so that is not what people want to talk about or accept or know. Um, the self-edification that is being used against philosophers is terrible. And so that's why philosophy is stepping backward and out of the picture altogether. So yeah, and then, of course, another reason why I'm into philosophy because yeah, that's topic for another time. But philosophy is not. It's not your mama's backyard talk. Um, it's funny and interesting in a sort of ironic kind of way how people will everybody knows like, oh, never talk about this at the dinner table with your parents or with your uncle or with Charlie or whoever. And so that's what philosophy begs us and demands us to have those conversations. Because if we don't, what's going to happen if we don't? What happens if you don't have those deep and meaningful, impactful conversations that illuminate the world and illuminate reality to each other, even in a glimpse, even if it's just for a glimpse? We just have tyranny, right? If you can't speak the truth, then it's tyranny, right? If you can't do what you want, it's tyranny, right? Because you're just submitting yourself to an oppressive force that is telling you do this or else, right? Bad things will happen. And I mean, that's despotism. That's it's a slave, slave ruler relationship. The philosopher is the ultimate equal, right? Because philosophy says that there is no form of truth that is better than any other truth, right? You have your opinion, and that's fine. We can debate opinions. You can debate opinions with people, but debating opinions. Oh, this is the best ice cream. That's the best ice cream. I mean, you know, that's um, that's a lower tier philosophy. I mean, that's like philosophy is facts. I mean, you're debating facts. You're debating reality. You're not debating which is the better ice cream and which is you guys the best. I mean, I ran kind of defined this in a way that nobody really ever touches on is that beauty is actually pretty objective. Right? I mean, a California 10, as Tom Likas would say, is probably a 10 or California 10 in Wisconsin to Wisconsin people, right? Or to Norwegian people. And so, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think I think art and beauty is pretty objective, and but that again, so I mean, philosophy is never ending, and it's just like breathing. I mean, it's never ending. But I mean, philosophy is because I guess the question, I guess, well, this is a sort of a open unleashing of my thoughts and philosophy in this context. So I mean, I will say in development of my thought that philosophy is actually does philosophy exist outside of people? I would say yes, but philosophy is only done by people. So two rocks on the ground, or a rock is still a rock, whether I'm here or not. But um, philosophy, the breadth and scope of philosophy. One less philosopher in this world is henceforth less philosophy in the world. So, a philosopher um, is this is a more appropriate way to put it is that philosophy is the mental process of humanity's relationship with reality. Rudimentary to philosophy is what is there, what we can establish that is there with our senses. And so whether we are absorbing information or not is irrelevant to what is that which is like that which is there. And so that I mean, so philosophy exists whether or not the philosopher exists, but philosophers are extrapolating. Good philosophers, reasonable philosophers, in my view, are extrapolating what philosophy is, where what is truth, what is reality, what is objective truth, what is that, what exists, what different perceptions are, how people come to their perceptions, how people change their perceptions. I mean, philosophy deals with everything. Philosophy deals with psychology. I mean, it deals with basically, everything, because everything that is. And of course, psychology is like the least scientific, literally, probably the least scientific study there is. And that's not me saying that. I mean, a lot of mainline people will say that, um, who are allowed to speak anyway about this kind of stuff, that psychology, I mean, almost a lot of stuff that is taught in psychological classrooms of psychology aren't even like basely uh, based in fact in an obvious way. Like they're pretty, like it's sort of like 50-50 distortion, maybe not true, maybe true, sort of idea in the mind. So I guess we'll put this in the curriculum. And so that's completely right. So I mean, philosophy deals with reality, and determining that which is, that which isn't, and morality. Um, Philosophy is a it's not a sport. It's a sport for a lot of people. Like, oh, like, let's just have a debate, and that's what I mean when I say, philosophy can be a sport at the very least. But I mean, once you understand the truth and the nature of reality, and of um, what real virtues are and what actual virtue is, then if you don't live by those virtues and you call yourself a philosopher and you call yourself a good philosopher, then no, you're just like everyone else, right? And you're not a philosopher. And that is, that's unfortunately that's 99.9% of people, or fortunately, depending on the way you look at it. So um, let's see here. So I mean, that's yeah. So it's just like, oh well, people say, well, philosophy sounds very isolated, man. It's just, you're lonely, you're depressed, all this kind of stuff. Just like, you ever been in a crowded room with, like, where everybody's talking and you just like, what? Like, you don't know, like you don't know these people from a hole in the wall. I'm just like, what? I mean, I think it's worse to be surrounded by people and pretend to have stuff in common with them, but then you have to completely be non-existent and just succumb to peer pressure to the point where you don't have a sense of self. I mean, what is it? A sort of popular ghost, or person in a room with a lot of people, where people are making mouth noises, and oh well, yeah, I have a lot of friends, yeah. So it's just like, I don't think our definition of friendship is the same. So I'll leave it at that. Yes, I mean, my relationship with philosophy is a great one, because philosophy is first and above everything else. Of course, we got to live and breathe. I mean, we're human beings too, but I'm just saying that philosophy is just not a, like, I just I didn't know what I was getting into, because most people who become most people, I think, who are, well, actually, no, I just, I know from the bottom of my heart that philosophers are, I think, very much predisposed to philosophy, um, outside of language. That's natural pressures of the day-to-day interactions, and perhaps birth order, perhaps genetics, perhaps that kind of stuff as well. But I think that, so, people are going to say, well, be careful if we get into philosophy, because, people don't look at, like, that's not how people make most of their life decisions. Like, I mean, most careers people get into, they didn't say, when I'm 5, this is what I'm going to do when I'm 25. That's for the parents who make those decisions for their kids when they're that age. I mean, right. I mean, I think it was Justin Bieber who, his mom got him into singing early, and he liked to sing. He naturally spontaneously started singing, and he had an interest and curiosity for singing, and his mom got him into it. Well, his mom. What I mean is his mom allowed she got out of the way. That's what I mean. She got out of the way so that his curiosity could flourish, and then she purported him, right? So when he wanted to sing more songs, I mean, I think she bought him a piano or something like that, or I forget what it was. She helped him along his career, and she took him out places, and she didn't avoid him and say, "Oh, I guess that was okay." Turn it down. I'm trying to listen to TV. Can you do that next weekend? I gotta put on a new outfit or something. You're giving me a headache. So, so most of, I think, so I think that's not just for philosophy. What I think, what people do, there's not a lot of prefacing, and philosophy is not there's a lot of happiness and there's a lot of gloom. I mean, you'll be more happy than the average. I can't even say that. No, I can't say that, because that's not. I mean, I can only speak for myself, so I'll leave it at that. So if anybody has, anything they want to add, this is, in the beginning of my streams, I got 4 digits for my stream. So yeah, that's correct. I do plan to make thousands of these. So I mean, is YouTube going to be around that long, or am I going to be around that long? Yeah, plan to. So yeah. So thanks for joining. But if you have any questions, feedback, criticisms, if you want to donate, or if you want to get a piece of some of the writings that I have, there's some writings that I have I'm going to be eventually publishing, collecting them together, first in sort of essay form, into eventually my own novel. Then but any of the sort of what I've just mentioned, then yeah, let me know. So thanks for watching, and sorry this has been so long-winded. Take care, or just listening. Thank you.